Okay, I have a question for the uneducated economist. I'm really just like, gosh, the more I try to, investigate and understand this Fed, the more confused I get. Oh my God, nothing seems to make sense. So I've heard that, the Fed, I tried to read their charter. Forget it. It's probably take me days of research to try to even understand what they're legally able to do. But I've heard that they are only able to buy government-backed debt instruments. I've heard that they cannot make purchases, so they can't buy stocks. They can't buy used bicycles. They can only loan money. So I guess, under their definition of loaning money, that would be buying a debt instrument or a bond. So, but I've also heard that they can only buy government-backed securities. So when I say securities, I'm talking about debt. So loans that are guaranteed by the federal government. So that would be U.S. Treasuries, mortgage-backed securities through Fannie Mae, I guess, and Freddie Mac, and then you have your student loans. Nothing else would qualify. So when these banks make these shit loans, and they've got all this garbage on their balance sheet now, and the Fed comes in to bail them out, I don't understand how that works. How do they bail out a bank? Because it seems like to me the only bailout the bank would get is, oh shit, this garbage that we loaned out to this shale fracker that's now bankrupt and their bonds are trading at 9 cents on the dollar. It seems like the Fed would have to pretty much pay face value in order to bail out that fucking bank. If they pay 9 cents on the dollar. How does that help the bank? That's not going to help the bank. They got 9 cents, they lost 91 cents. The loss was already on the bank's balance sheet. So does the Fed have investors that it has a fiduciary responsibility to? Because if they do, then how could you go pay 100 cents on the dollar for a bond that was worth 9 cents on the dollar? None of this shit's making sense to me. I'm hoping maybe you can explain that or try to tackle this one. The other thing is, I'll go back to the negative yielding bonds. I think on your last podcast, you basically indicated that the only buyer of those bonds, negative yielding bonds, would be the Treasury. So if that's or not the Treasury, but the Fed. So if that's the case, then if the it seems like to me, if the Fed is the only buyer of U.S. Treasuries, that's when we move into Weimar Republic, and the dollar just implodes. So the way it's been explained to me is you've got to have buyers all around the world that are willing to buy U.S. Treasuries, and if the Fed's the only buyer of these negative yielding Treasuries, that sounds like Zimbabwe. So I don't know. I'd appreciate your thoughts on this. Maybe you can try to tackle some of these questions on your next podcast. Thanks.